All right, can everyone hear me okay? No? I don't believe you. Hi, thank you, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Stephen Walther, and I'm going to be talking about what we've been doing with ASP.NET AJAX. I'm really excited to be here today because I get to do a lot of, great announcements. I want to start by asking, how many of you like programming in JavaScript? How many of you like working with JavaScript? That's great. How many of you really love working with JavaScript? It's really can we turn down the sound just a little bit, please? So that's great. Most of you raised your hands. I think you're really going to like some of the new improvements we've added into ASP.NET AJAX. We've done a lot of things, not only to improve the experience for ASP.NET Web Form developers, but also for people who want to use web forms and do a lot of client-side code. So as I mentioned before, I have a lot of announcements to talk about. So I'm going to start off by talking about that. And then I'm going to discuss the new features that we've introduced into our ASP.NET AJAX library to give you an overview of what you can do with the technology. And finally, I want to show how some of our partners and some of our customers are already taking advantage of the new features of ASP.NET AJAX. So I have 5 big announcements to do right now. I'm excited about this because this is something we've been working on for like 6 months now. So I'm going to start with announcement number 1. Here comes the first big announcement. Are you ready for this? All right, so we just released the beta version of ASP.NET AJAX this morning, and we released it on a new CodePlex website. I think that's a beautiful domain name, AJAX. How can you do better than that? It's at ajax.codeplex.com. That's where you can download the latest beta version of the ASP.NET AJAX library. So go there. The other place where we released it is on the Microsoft AJAX Content Delivery Network. How many of you have worked with the Content Delivery Network already? All right, some of you. For those who don't know what it is, it's basically a place where Microsoft is hosting JavaScript files so that you get better performance. Oh, that's the magic word, performance, which we'll talk about later on today. We've done a lot of things to improve ASP.NET AJAX performance. But you don't only get performance benefits, it also means that you can start taking advantage of our ASP.NET AJAX library immediately without installing anything on your server. Because as I'll show you in a moment, all you have to do is add a script reference right to that, to start.js, and then you're ready to go. You're ready to take advantage of all the features of ASP.NET AJAX without doing anything else on your server. So yeah, remember those 2 URLs. So big announcement number 2. So the second big announcement is that we are combining the AJAX control toolkit and the Microsoft AJAX library into a new single project. The goal is to take all the advantages of the AJAX control toolkit and bring all those benefits over to Microsoft AJAX and to do things the other way around. The AJAX control toolkit is it's mind-boggling how popular the AJAX control toolkit is. It gets 25,000 downloads a week from CodePlex. It's one of the most popular CodePlex projects of all time. Everyone is using the AJAX control toolkit in their web forms applications. Extremely popular set of controls, 40 controls that you can use in your web forms applications. Traditionally, though, you couldn't use the AJAX control toolkit controls very easily in the context of anything except for a web forms application. You couldn't use it in, say, MVC or in HTML or PHP or anything other than web forms. Well, we fixed that. As of today, you can now start using the majority of the AJAX control toolkit controls in any type of HTML application whatsoever. They're all now designed to work from both the server side and the client side. So that's why we merged them together. And most of our work that we've been doing for the past 6 months in improving the ASP.NET AJAX library was to make that possible. Okay. So what that means is the CodePlex project, just if you want to know the breakdown of it, it actually has 2 parts. It has a pure client part, which contains the Microsoft AJAX library, and it also contains the extended part, which contains the AJAX control toolkit. On the server side, we didn't want to change the experience for web form developers at all. We want to improve the experience for web form developers over time by investing in one single project, our energy into improving one single project. So for web forms developers, you can still continue to drag and drop controls from the toolbox, or if you prefer, you can start using it from client side. It's up to you. We support either model in web forms. I think I just said that, but I'll reemphasize it. The goal is to make sure that ASP.NET AJAX works everywhere. Works in MVC, works in PHP, works wherever. This is pure client-side technology that you can fall back to using server-side controls if you really want to in web forms. I went backwards. Whoops. All right, big announcement number 3. Are you ready for this one? There's been a lot of publicity about this already today. Big announcement number 3 is that Microsoft has contributed the ASP.NET AJAX library to the CodePlex Foundation. What that means is we're now truly an open source software. Our plan is to take contributions from the community and leverage the advantages of being in the open source world to improve the ASP.NET AJAX library. So if you haven't heard about the CodePlex Foundation, don't confuse the CodePlex Foundation with codeplex.com. Codeplex.com is a place for hosting projects. The CodePlex Foundation is an open source foundation. We've released now the ASP.NET AJAX library under the new BSD license, under the standard new BSD license, and we will be taking contributions into the library shortly. If you want to learn more about the CodePlex Foundation, go to codeplex.org. I'm actually really proud of the fact that we're the founding project for the CodePlex Foundation. Yeah. All right. So this is going to seem kind of strange after the last announcement, but this is going to make a big difference to companies who want to take advantage of the ASP.NET AJAX library. Open source doesn't mean that we're not going to support the ASP.NET AJAX library. And one of our goals is to make sure that companies feel comfortable taking advantage of the, say the AJAX control toolkit controls or the client templates and all that stuff. So our plan is to offer full Microsoft product support for the ASP.NET AJAX library when it RTMs, when the final version comes out. So this is a combination of, we're going to make it an open source project, but at the same time, we're going to offer Microsoft product support for the open source project. Final announcement. If you haven't seen this one yet, we've sort of previewed parts of this before, but one of our goals with ASP.NET AJAX is to enable jQuery developers to take advantage of all the innovative stuff we're doing in our library and not have to change their current style of programming. How many of you are jQuery developers? All right, so I just say personally, I love you guys. We're doing everything we can to make it easy for you guys to continue using jQuery. So the main thing we've done is we've exposed all the AJAX control toolkit controls automatically as jQuery plugins. You get full IntelliSense. So if you want to use any of the 30-some controls within an application where it's already been written with jQuery, you get full IntelliSense. You can pop up a watermark, autocomplete, any of those guys, and just treat them like jQuery plugins. You can also take advantage of all the innovative stuff we've done around data access and around performance with the script loader within your jQuery code. So think of us as extensions to jQuery if you've been programming already with jQuery. All right, so here's a summary of the big announcements again. Beta was released today. We have the beta. I should mention one other thing I haven't mentioned here. We also released a wiki today, the AJAX wiki at www.asp.net/AJAX library. We know that we could create the greatest AJAX library in the world, and if we don't have tutorials and sample code, no one will ever use it. So we've actually released a wiki today where you can go and view tutorials and walkthroughs and sample applications for using all this stuff. So definitely take advantage of it's www.asp.net/AJAX library. Okay, So let's get to what you can do with all this stuff. Let me show you some demonstrations of how you can use this. So the main thing the ASP.NET AJAX library is, it's a rich library for building AJAX applications. And we pride ourselves that it's designed to be compatible with all modern browsers. So IE 6 and above, and the latest version of every other modern browser out there. So it's all cross-browser compatible. The rich set of controls is the AJAX control toolkit, which you can now, again, use from the client side. And finally, since it is a pure client-side library, it means that it's completely server agnostic. You can use it on, MVC, or you can use it with PHP or whatever you want. As long as it's an HTML page, you can go ahead and use it. So let's talk specifically about the AJAX library features. So I want to start by talking about the data access story we've built into it. So we pride ourselves on focusing on data access. That's where we think one of our big strengths lie in creating a really powerful client-side data access library. So to do that, we have something called a client data context. And if you worked with, say, Link to SQL or the Entity Framework, you've worked with server-side data context, right? A data context is used to interact with the database. It tracks changes to the items in the data context. Well, we've done the same thing on the client side. So our client data context is designed to work with ASMX web services. You can use it with that, WCF services, or in reality, or ADO.NET data services, or in reality, anything that returns JSON. Anything that returns JSON at all. MVC controller action, another good example of something that can return JSON from it. Anytime you return JSON, we can go ahead and consume it. Our data context is read-write, so you can not only use it to grab data, you can also use it to update and insert data. Again, want to emphasize this, all from client-side code without writing anything except for the services that are clearly running on the server. Client templates, so we have one main control in our client-side AJAX library called the data view control, which supports client-side templates. You can think of the data view control as something like the list view control or the repeater control, except it's all pure client code. It's all pure JavaScript. So what it does is it allows you to create a template in the client, grab some data from a web service, and then format each of the records as you're displaying them. Finally, we support rich client data binding. So we support something called two-way data binding. So if you make changes to a record at one place on the page, those changes can be reflected out everywhere else on the page. All right, so let's see some demos. Let me show you some of the stuff we've been working on. So let me go ahead and run the page to show you what it does first, and then I'll explain how it's actually implemented. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Isn't that pretty? So we got some pretty pictures of animals and a bridge. One thing I want to point out immediately, notice in the URL that this is just an HTML page. All the samples I'm actually going to show you are HTML pages, just to emphasize the fact that these could run in an MVC view just as easily as in an ASPX page. Okay, so how did I do this? Well, in this case, I've created something called a data view control. And you can see it right here. And I'm attaching my data view to a DOM element called image view. So that's just, I'll show you that DOM element in a moment. The syntax should be very reminiscent of jQuery. And what I've done is I've specified the name of, in this case, a WCF service, a method I want to call on the WCF service called getImages, and that's all I need to do to set up the data view. So I've created my data view using pure imperative code. I should emphasize that I get full IntelliSense while I'm doing this. As I type it out, this stuff will show up in IntelliSense within the editor, which is nice. And down here in the image view, this is where the template's actually defined. So you can see the template right here. And notice all it is, it's a fragment of HTML. That's it, right? It's just a plain old fragment of HTML. It has some placeholders inside of it, since I'm showing the name of the image, and I'm also showing the, the URL for the image. It's pulling that stuff out of the database, and it's just showing it for each of the items. So that's all I have to do. I should also emphasize you can put whatever JavaScript you want within these placeholders. So if I had like, I don't know, a price that I was showing, I can go ahead and call a JavaScript function and format it. Whatever I want to do inside of there, it's fine. So, nothing fancy here. The only sort of strange thing is the sys::source thing. And what that enables you to do is you don't want the image loading up, when it first loads up, an image called curly brace URI, which it would do, right? Because you have an image tag with source equals curly brace URI. So what it does is it defers the interpretation of that source tag until it's actually binding against data. Now, if you don't like this syntax, and there are some people who don't like this syntax because they're very worried about standards. I personally kind of like this syntax because I think it's very clean and it's very easy to understand. But if you don't want any custom namespaces at all in your code, we also support, if you don't want to write it like this, you could write the exact same page like this. Here's my template now. Notice that there's no more curly braces in there. Actually, there's nothing wrong with curly braces, even from a standards perspective. There's no more custom namespaces. This is just pure markup. In that case, if you want to write code that looks like that, all you have to do is add in a item rendered event handler. That's what I'm doing right here on my data view. And then down here in my item rendered event handler, I'm manually binding to the data. So it's a little extra work, but what you end up with is completely clean HTML without any namespaces or anything in it at all. You could stick this in a separate JavaScript file and just have markup that you hand out, say, to your designers. Okay. So let's look at a slightly more complicated example. This is a place where I think client data access really shines. I'm going to show you an example of creating a master detail form all on the client side. The beautiful thing about, if you're doing a master detail form on the server side, every time you picked a master record, you'd have to post back to the server, re-grab the data, and show the details. The nice thing about doing it in a pure client-side scenario is you can load all the data on the client-side data context, and then when you click on a master record, you can see the detail record instantly. So there's no pause at all. So it allows you to create a really interactive, responsive experience. So let me go ahead and run this so you get an idea of how it works. And then I'll show you how easy it was to get it to work. So I have here, again, my list of pictures. I'm going to click on this guy right here. Now I get my details over here. So I got my details. And notice that this is happening instantly, right? Because this is all on the client side now. All these records are here, so I don't have to do a fetch each and every time I click on one of the pictures. Now this is a good place also to show off. I mentioned before that we support something called two-way data binding, and this is a nice place to show that. I want you to watch very carefully. I'm going to change peer 99 to peer 77. Now, all I'm going to do now, you have to trust me on this since you can't see my hands, I'm going to hit the tab key. And what I want you to do is look at peer 99 up here, over here. Because what you're going to see, it's like magic. Ooh, did you see that? So it actually changed from 99 to 77. Everything's two-way bound. So that means that wherever that record, the value of that property shows up in the page, it's going to automatically reflect any changes. Which is nice for these kinds of master detail scenarios. All right, so let's look at how this page was implemented. So in this page, what I did is I created a master view. And again, I'm going against the image service. So I created a master data view. And then I created a details data view. That's this guy right here. Notice that this guy doesn't have any data. It's not bound against data because it's going to get its data from whatever record selected in the master data view. And then finally, right here, I'm binding the master and detail data views together. Isn't that simple? Isn't that beautiful? All I have to do is call sys.bind, and I say whatever the selected data is on the master, go ahead and assign that to the detail view, and then everything works. So that's the only thing I had to do to set up this relationship between the master detail data view, and everything else is taken care of by the framework behind the scenes. All right. So far what I've shown you is I've shown you how to grab some data out and display it using templates, which is pretty cool all by itself. But the next thing I want to show you is we support read-write data access. You can do read-write data access with any kind of backend data source. You could do it with an ASMX service. But I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it is to use an ADO.NET to use ADO.NET data services. If you've ever worked with ADO.NET data services, you know that they automatically expose CRUD operations, the create, update, delete, and insert operations for you. And so it makes it very, very easy to be able to do these read-write scenarios with them. So I want to show you how that works. So let me show you what it does first, and then I'll show you what the code looks like behind the scenes. So we're back to this thing again. I have my giraffe right there. I'm going to change it to, Bob the giraffe. There we go. Notice the two-way data binding. And so at this point, it hasn't been saved to the database, right? But it's been marked as dirty. It now knows, the client data context knows that record is dirty, and it's been changed. I'm going to go around and make some other changes. So let's just go crazy. I'm going to put in some exclamation marks. I'm going to go over here. Let's change that to highway, something like that. Why not? Let's just go crazy here. There. So I've made all sorts of changes now. And they're all being, cached on the client side. When I'm ready to actually update, I can just go ahead and click Save Changes. The changes have been saved, and now everything's saved. Now, the nice thing about this is it's only detecting the records that have been changed. It's batching them up and doing it in one post operation. For performance reasons, you typically don't want a chatty scenario between the client and the server. You want it to be smart enough and only send a change set back to the server. And just to prove to you that those changes were actually made, if I open this up again, you'll notice that, look, all the changes are still there. So they've all been persisted back. In this case, I'm using an ADO.NET data service to do that. So setting this up didn't take that much work. I had to explicitly create an ADO.NET data context. That's what I'm doing here. And to set that up, all I have to do is give the URL to the ADO.NET data service. So that's set up. And then I can actually, instead of using that URL that I was using before for the data provider, I can just point at the data context and I'm done. So it's basically the same code from there on out. It's just that now I'm using an ADO.NET data context. It knows how to save the data for you automatically. Not a lot of work to get the read-write update. Okay. All right, so the next thing, this is the newest addition. This is the big new feature that we've introduced for today, for the PDC, is I want to talk about the rich set of controls that we've added, the AJAX Control Toolkit controls, and how we've now integrated those into the ASP.NET AJAX library. Now, just to emphasize, AJAX Control Toolkit control has 40 controls right now. You can use all of those from the server side. You can't use quite all of those controls in a client-side scenario. The reason for that is, for some of them, it just wouldn't make sense. For example, like the update animation panel, there's a control for that. If you're doing a pure client-side scenario, it doesn't really make sense to try to do that. Or a validation call-out control, again, doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's about 34, 35 controls I can use both from the server side and from the client side. And I do want to re-emphasize, in case you want to continue, if you have existing applications, which I assume most of you do, that are using the AJAX Control Toolkit control, our goal is not to break any of those applications, obviously. We want those applications to continue to work, so we designed everything to be completely backwards compatible with the existing AJAX Control Toolkit. We didn't change the assembly, we didn't change the namespace names, those are the same. The controls are the same, and you can still stick them in the toolbox and drag them out, and they'll work exactly the same way as they did before. So we're not going to change the experience for web forms developers other than to improve the quality of the controls over time and expand the set of controls over time that web form developers can use. So the new stuff, though, is we introduced something called a client script loader. And what the client script loader enables you to do, well, it makes the client-side use of the AJAX Control Toolkit possible. Because what the client script loader enables you to do is load all of the scripts required by a control or a component automatically in the background in parallel, and then execute them in the right order. So it's important to understand that. I didn't fully understand the way the client script loader was working before. So the way it works is that it can actually load all the scripts required by a control in parallel, asynchronously, right? And then once it has it, for performance reasons, it can pull them all in at the same time. And once it has them all loaded in at the same time, it knows which order it needs to be able to execute the scripts, because you got to get the JavaScripts executed in the right order. No, do it in the right order. So client script loader offers you really great performance and enables you to take advantage of all of the AJAX Control Toolkit controls. The other thing, it has a lot of advanced features I'm not going to be showing you, but I want to mention because these are things that people need and people want. I want to make sure you know that we actually implemented it. One of them is script combining. In general, you want to reduce the number of requests that you have to make from the web browser back to the server. You don't want to, again, be too chatty. So we support automatic script combining. If there's scripts that are almost always requested together, it will automatically combine those and just make one request instead of two. We support something, I always think of this as lazy loading, but I've heard that a better term for it is on-demand loading. The idea of on-demand loading is, let's say you're creating a website and you have a print button on the website, and maybe only 1% of users ever hit that print button. Why make everyone suffer? You don't want everyone who visits the website to have to download the JavaScript file that implements the print functionality, whatever your JavaScript is. So what on-demand loading allows you to do is only load a JavaScript file when it's actually needed. So it allows you to defer loading seldom used JavaScript files. All right, so let me show you some examples of using the client script loader. So on this page, this is kind of the, oh, you're not seeing that, are you? There we go, that's much better. All right, so hopefully this page scares you. Look at all those scripts that you have to have up there. And these are all the scripts that you have to use something called the watermark control. So there's 7 of them. So this was kind of the problem that we initially faced when we started thinking about, well, how can we enable people to use the AJAX Control Toolkit in client-side scenarios? We looked at the list of 7 scripts and the fact that people have to add them in the right order, and we said no one would really want to do that. So we need to come up with a really good solution so that people can easily use these client controls on the client side. So, so what we did is we created the client script loader. And what the client script loader enables us to do is reduce all of that down to, actually you only really need 1, but we have 2 here, so you get the IntelliSense for the AJAX Control Toolkit controls. So that first file, start.js, contains our new client script loader, and strictly speaking, that's all you need to be able to use the entire ASP.NET AJAX library. Because once you have the script loader on the page, you can load everything else that you need automatically through it. So that's why, technically, all you need to do is point to that one start.js file on the CDN, on the Content Delivery Network, and you're done. You can load everything else through the framework. So once you have the client script loader, you'll notice down here I have this sys.require statement. And what I'm saying here is I want to go ahead and require everything I need. I want to load automatically everything I need to use the client watermark control. And so, and then I supply a callback function. I could have broke this into 2 separate functions if I didn't want to create it. I could have, instead of creating an anonymous function here, I could have just created a normal function. But I kind of like this kind of looks clean. And so when it's finished loading all the required scripts, you can go ahead and call sys.createWatermark and create a watermark control. Again, I should emphasize you get full IntelliSense here, so you can say what DOM element you want to attach it to. You can say that you can provide the text for the watermark, and in this case, I'm actually providing a CSS class. And then if you actually look at the watermark, it's just an input element, right? I'm just assigning it to that. So this actually is pretty simple, right? I mean, all you had to do is pull in those 2 scripts, you get IntelliSense for the rest, and you have an easy way to create a watermark. There's the watermark. All right, watermark's kind of, I mean, it's a nice control. It's just not the most exciting control out of the 40 controls. I tend to show the watermark a lot because, honestly, it was the first control that we converted, so we were so proud of the watermark that we ended up using it for all of our demos for a while. But we do actually have more useful controls than the watermark. We also have, for example, the autocomplete control. It's also very easy to use. Autocomplete, you've probably used it before from server side. We've just exposed it now in client-side code. Autocomplete works against a web service. So you define a suggestion service that returns an array of suggestions. So you get the suggestions as you type. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm specifying the service method. It's called getSuggestions, and I think I implement this as a WCF service. It could be an ASMX service as well. Oh, it is an ASMX service. I got that wrong. It's an ASMX service, and I'm calling the getSuggestions web method on it to get the list of suggestions. The rest of it, I'm actually attaching it down here to a input element, and that's it. And if I run this guy, then this is going against a database of movies. So if I type in S, I get, Star Wars, Superman. Anyway, I could have done a little more styling here too but you get the basic idea that the watermark now just works. And again, it's important to notice that this is just an HTML page, so you could use this control in an MVC application just as easily as in an ASPX application. Okay, so we looked at a couple of examples of using the AJAX controls. The last thing I want to talk about, we're also very proud of this. We put a lot of work into making sure that this happens correctly. We wanted to, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this talk, we wanted to make it very easy for jQuery developers to take advantage of all the innovative stuff that we've been doing. So again, the stuff that we pride ourselves on is we think we have a really great client data access story, the stuff that I showed you of data access. We think the set of 30-some controls is really great and are really useful, could be potentially very useful to jQuery developers. And we think we have a really great performance story with our client script loader. So we want to allow jQuery developers to take advantage of all of these innovative features. So we put a lot of work into making sure that everything in ASP.NET AJAX just works seamlessly with jQuery. That was our goal. And so if you're used to using jQuery selector syntax to attach plugins to DOM elements, we just automatically support that. So any ASP.NET AJAX control, anything that you add into the framework at all is automatically exposed as a jQuery plugin. So let me show you how that works. And you get IntelliSense too. I should mention that. You get Visual Studio, does really great with jQuery, especially Visual Studio 2010. It's amazing what it can do with jQuery. So here's an example. In this case, again, because our goal is to enable jQuery, one of our big goals is to enable jQuery developers to really take advantage of all the data access stuff. Let me show you an example of using a data view. So notice here I'm using a jQuery selector to be able to grab a DOM element. And then I'm just calling .dataview on it and passing in a property back. So that works fine. The other thing you should notice about this is I happen in this case to be statically including jQuery. I could load up jQuery if I wanted to using the script loader. It's one of the things I can load in here in sys.require. Either way, you can get jQuery into your page and start using it. So this is going to do the same thing as that page I showed you earlier. It's going to show the list of images, but notice that I'm just using a pure jQuery-like syntax here. And just to show you, one of the innovative features of jQuery, one of the reasons people like it so much is it supports the chaining, right? It's nice to be able to get a wrap set back, do a series of operations on that wrap set to be able to more efficiently work with DOM elements. So in this example, what I have is I have a bunch of input elements. I don't know why I stopped at 3. It would have been more fun for this demo if I had 100 or something. But anyway, so I have 3 input elements here. I'm using a jQuery selector up here to be able to grab all the input elements. I'm making each one of them a watermark. And then after I make it a watermark, I can go ahead and say .css to go ahead and make the background color of each of them yellow. That works fine. We support full jQuery chaining. So if you go ahead and say View in Browser, we get 3 watermarks with yellow backgrounds. So that all works great. All right, so last part of the talk, I want to talk about some of the people who are using the ASP.NET AJAX library right now. One group of people who are using ASP.NET AJAX is the Live Messenger team, and they're coming out with an SDK, the Messenger Web Toolkit, that's based on the ASP.NET AJAX library. They're taking advantage of our control infrastructure to be able to support the controls that they're providing for their toolkit. So you should see that coming up. The other thing I want to show you is I want to show you a sample application that NASA's been working on, that NASA's going to use to host a community website using the ASP.NET AJAX library. So there's something called the Microsoft Town Hall project. You might have heard of this from the keynote talk earlier. The Microsoft Town Hall project it's a question and answer forum. Microsoft is developing it as open source and contributing it to CodePlex. So you guys can take advantage of it. This application was written, or is being written using the ASP.NET AJAX library and also MVC2. So it's using both of those behind the scenes. NASA is going to be the first to use it, and they'll take advantage of the new ASP.NET AJAX features I've been showing you. So it's actually a really pretty website. Here's the slide here. It's actually online too. Should I risk it? All right, if this goes badly, don't hold it against me in the evaluation. All right. Yes, here it is. It's right. See, I'm not actually switching to the. Okay. I'm not going to risk that right now. So let's go back to the laptop. All right, great. So I want to show you how that page was implemented. So the first thing I want you to notice is it is using the CDN, the AJAX CDN. I can't emphasize enough. You've noticed that as you came in, you probably got that performance paper. I hope you have. If you haven't got the performance paper yet, it's up front here. So I want to make sure everyone gets a hold of one of them before they leave the room. But what the performance paper does is it talks about all the performance improvements you get from doing things like using the AJAX minifier that we supply and using and also using the script loader. Another big performance gain that you get is just using a content delivery network. And we encourage you to use the content delivery network for your production applications because it enables everyone to benefit. Because as soon as a person's downloaded it for one website, it's automatically cached on their browser for every other website that uses the same content delivery network. So we want you to take advantage of that. Again, all you have to do is point to it and you can start using it. You don't even have to register. You can just do it right now. You can type it into a page and just start using it. So you should also notice that the site is taking advantage of the client script loader. So it's pulling everything in there. It is using a data view control. And down here, you'll see this is where it's showing the question text. And another nice thing that they're doing is they actually have a nested data view in the page. So they're showing tags associated with each of the questions that are posted on the site. Nothing wrong with creating a nested data view. You can nest one data view inside of another and just show the data from the containing data view. That works fine. So they're doing that. Last thing I should point out is the data views are implemented in slightly different ways. I haven't really talked about this, but we actually support not only imperative syntax, we also support a fully declarative syntax for any of the controls. So if you don't want to create your controls using the sys.create method that I showed you earlier, all you have to do is to create a control is you can use syntax that looks like that. You can use sys.attach, and then up here in the namespace, I'm actually specifying that DV represents a data view control. So if you find that more intuitive, go ahead and take advantage of that. That's what they're doing here. We could have, this could have been implemented using imperative syntax for both the containing data view and the nested one, if that was the preference. But anyway. Okay. So let me give you a summary of everything that we've been talking about. So, so far we've talked about the 5 big announcements. And the big one was we actually released the beta version of the ASP.NET AJAX library this morning, which is, thank goodness, we actually got it done and it's all out there now for you guys to use. The new ASP.NET AJAX library is designed to work with any type of backend application. In particular, don't forget you can use all this in MVC or even PHP or pure HTML applications works great. It is open source. It is now the founding project for the CodePlex Foundation. It's released under a new BSD license. Please go to the AJAX Library Wiki website to find out how you can contribute, to find out the procedure for contributing. It's going to be fully supported. It's not fully supported now, since this is the beta release. It will be fully supported when we go to RTM. And finally, don't forget to take advantage of the content delivery network. The main features that I want you to take away from this talk for the ASP.NET AJAX library is the powerful client data access. We're super proud of that. We've done a lot of work for the client data context, client templates, client data view control. Made a lot of investments there. And don't forget, you can use all of this stuff from jQuery. So use it as jQuery plugins. We're also proud of the rich set of controls. You can use all the 40 controls from the AJAX control toolkit the same way on the server side. We have not changed that experience at all. The nice thing now is, regardless of whether you're working in web forms or you're working in MVC or whatever, you can now use those 30-some controls from the client side. And finally, want to emphasize a seamless jQuery integration. jQuery, we love jQuery. We want to make sure that we're not trying to duplicate any functionality in jQuery. We want to leverage what's innovative in jQuery and add on top of it. So what we've done is we've allowed you now to use jQuery syntax and just expose all the AJAX control toolkits, controls and data view controls and all the stuff we're doing automatically as jQuery plugins. So for additional resources, James Sr. has a blog entry that he put out this morning for the announcement for all the new stuff that's going on. So his name's very easy to remember, jamessenior.com. So go ahead and visit that website to see the latest announcement stuff. There is a Channel 9 Learn Center. The labs are being updated right now to cover the new beta release, but it's a good place to start learning. Also, don't forget AJAX library wiki, asp.net/AJAX library, go there. And yeah, I actually put it up on the slide. So don't forget to download the bits. Don't forget to learn how to use the bits. Those are the two most important addresses to go to. So let me go ahead and stop here and see if there's any questions about any of this. Yes? Yeah, so the question is, when do we expect to get out of beta? So right now we're aiming, it's always risky to give an exact date on that because you never know. But we're trying to align as much as possible with what's going on with Visual Studio. So if that helps at all. Yeah. Well, okay. I should have just said March. I hope to confuse you with my subtle, anyway. Sorry, any other questions? Yes? Yeah. Oh, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, so the question is, do we support jQuery IntelliSense when you're pulling jQuery from the CDN? That's a really great question. Unfortunately, we don't support it on 2008, but one of the things we immediately did was test that when we set up the CDN, and so we made sure that we support it in 2010. So 2010 has full jQuery IntelliSense from the CDN. It'll pull down the VS doc file or debug file automatically from the CDN, which we're also hosting there. Anything else?
Is the high-performance web app document available online as well as part of it?
Yeah, so it's available at that website right there at the AJAX library website. You just go to the Learn page. And it's on the very bottom. You can just click. It's in PDF form. So did everyone get a copy of the white paper? It's up here in front, too, if you haven't got one yet. Oh, I'm sorry. It's on the way out, so you can grab one while you're leaving too. All right. Thanks very much.